This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
A note to listeners. The following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
Okay, well, I think something that's really important, and I just want to say this first, there is no negative today, and I want people to understand that. So if we spend all afternoon and all night here and don't recover anything usable or viable, that's okay.
This is a very complex investigation, and there is a lot going on, and there were a lot of moving parts, and it seemed like you guys were getting information from all kinds of different places, and a lot of it conflicted with each other, which is why the forensics comes into play, in my opinion, very strongly.
Do you know when you go up to a gate, a cattle gate, and you open it and the chain's dinging on the cattle gate? That's what it sounds like.
Okay, to my mind, too, is a chain, like they're...
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
We have been working on this case with Paula for almost 5 years now. For the past 6 months since the podcast started, we've tried to expose as much information as possible in order to find out what happened to Molly and Colt and where their remains might be. We have spoken to family members, friends, tipsters, law enforcement officers, and we have tapped into experts in the true crime world to help us with this insanely complicated and convoluted mystery.
It has been a journey like no other, and we appreciate everyone's support because without all of our listeners, this case would still be extremely cold. We know for a fact that law enforcement agencies around the state are looking into this case, and the pressure to find answers to the murders of Molly and Colt is the strongest it has ever been. Over the next several weeks, we will be releasing a series of podcasts from Ground Zero, live from Love County.
In order to get answers, you sometimes need boots on the ground. So this past week, Rob and I traveled back to Love County with a team of experts to start searching for the remains of Molly and Colt. Over the last month, we've been doing a lot of recon on some of the places of interest that we've been talking about on the podcast. After consulting with our experts, there are 2 places that we feel need a thorough search: Moxley Pond on the BattleSprings Ranch property, and a decommissioned oil well nearby.
Now, these just aren't random searches. They are targeted searches. The information on both of these locations have been discussed and vetted as potential dumping grounds for their remains. In addition, several cadaver dog teams over the course of a year at different times have had significant hits at both of these locations.
What does this mean? Does it mean that Molly and Colt are there? We don't know. But based on all of the information that we have gathered over the years, the cell phone records, the tipster leads, the 911 calls, the rumors, and the police reports, now is the time to do the search.
Based on the information that we know, there has never been a full forensic search of any of the locations mentioned in the podcast. That's including the ravine near where the chase car was found, and the burn pit. Oh wait, there was some dirt from the burn pit that was taken away in a Mountain Dew can, but that was a while ago.
Law enforcement in the area are aware of what we are doing, and should we find anything, they will be called immediately and given anything that is discovered. But this time we will document everything on video, so nothing gets misplaced, and hopefully it will be analyzed properly this time.
Today's podcast is going to be a little different. You will be hearing the sounds and the dialogue of experts and volunteers as they drain, dig, and sift through the mountains of water and dirt from Moxley Pond. The goal is to either find some remains and clues. If we don't find anything, then we can just cross it off the list, something that should have been done years ago.
We're going to start off with introducing the 2 forensic experts that we flew into Love County to help us, and the volunteers. Maureen O'Connell is a retired FBI agent with extensive experience on crime scenes. Sheryl McCollum is a CSI tech and the director of the Cold Case Investigative Research Institute based in Atlanta, Georgia.
One of the key team members is Toby Thomas, who owns BattleSprings Ranch, and who without him and his hardworking team of ranch hands, none of this would be possible. Then there's Paula Fielder, the inspiration for this entire investigation, and she brought along her oldest son, Heath Wright, along with his wife, Bonnie, who are both ready to help get this search done. Time to start digging on day one of the search. All right, so we're in Overbrook, Oklahoma. We're at Moxley Lake, BattleSprings Ranch. If everyone who's watched the television show and in the podcast remember that this hole, Moxley Pond, was a potential place where we think Molly and Colt's bodies are. And we're out here today with a bunch of people. We have Sheryl McCollum, otherwise known as Mac. And Sheryl, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us why you're here.
Well, I'm a working crime scene investigator with the Metro Atlanta Police Department, and I run the Cold Case Investigative Research Institute. You and Cindy were gracious enough to invite me out, and Maureen said, come on, join me. Let's see if we can help this family, and I was all about it.
Okay, yeah, so this particular hole, Cindy, if you remember, Toby Thomas, who owns this property, right after Toby bought this property, he was informed that this property could be the crime scene or a dumping ground for Molly and Colt's bodies. He drained that pond, and he brought in some cadaver dogs with Adventures of Purpose, and dogs hit all over the place. Right. And we've talked about that in the podcast quite a bit. And Toby talked about it. We've talked about it. We decided that, and he didn't really have the technique or the expertise to really do anything after that, and he was afraid he might screw up the crime scene, so he waited. And then when we spoke to him on the podcast, we all decided that we needed to bring a team in, someone like yourself and also Maureen O'Connell, retired FBI, to decide on how to really excavate this site properly in case we do find something, that it can be preserved and that it could be used as evidence. And so that's why we're here. Now we're here. They're pumping out the pond again. We have a backhoe that's going to be pulling all those remnants out of the area where the dogs hit. And you guys are going to sift through it. And tell us what you're going to be looking for, and tell us the technique that you're going to be using to try to sift through all this muck.
Okay, well, I think something that's really important, and I just want to say this first, there is no negative today, and I want people to understand that. So if we spend all afternoon and all night here and don't recover anything usable or viable, that's okay. That to me is a win. So now we know where they're not, and we just move to number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5 until we're satisfied. So I want people to know that first. But what we're going to be doing today, we've got screens that are small enough, the little squares, that they could catch a tooth, they could catch a zipper, a button, anything that might show us that someone was here, clothing or a bone. So I'm personally, the way I start is once they get this drained, just almost an eye level view. Is anything protruding from that silt? There's a chance the femur bone could be sticking up. You never know. So that's the first thing I'm going to do, because I believe if it were me and you walk right down there and you throw 2 bodies off that ledge, they're going to be right near, not flat, but pretty close to right up against the wall of that. I mean, to me, it looks like a quarry. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, talk about that, because when you came here, we were just like literally 5 minutes ago when you first saw the site, you were amazed. And tell us about that. You
so amazed, because when you walk through these woods, typically with the topography, you can tell there's going to be water over there, whether it's a spring or a creek or a river or a lake. Here, as you walk, you can't tell you're fixing to come up on anything. When you get there, it's literally probably 20 feet to the water. And in some parts, it might even be 30, and then it's got a bank of bamboo on top that you couldn't traverse through if you tried. And then you've got, it looks like almost an old little trestle bridge that has fallen with some cement that you couldn't really get to. And then this side that we're on, which is the way they would have come most likely, again, I think it's one of the highest points. And if I were to jump off there and land in that little pond area, there ain't no way to get out of it. I mean, there's just not. You couldn't scale that wall because it's limestone. It's going to break away if you try to climb it or put a shovel in it or anything like that. So if they're there, they are right there.
Interesting. And you also was telling us earlier, too, is that if you found a bone, describe to us what it's going to look like.
The bones will be black, almost shiny black. So again, you might think it's a stick or, part of a log that's broken away, but you need to absolutely examine every single thing. Things that are in that water, whether it's snakes and turtles and frogs and fish, they have eaten away everything pretty quick. That happened almost immediately. They went in that water. So the bones are going to be there, and they can be spread out a little bit because it is a naturally fed spring. So that water has some movement from the bottom, but not a lot to move a body or to really move a bone. But it would put silt more on top. So I don't think we've got to go. I mean, you're talking about 2013. I don't think we have to go more than maybe 2 feet before we're going to see something if they're there.
Okay. And then should we find something based upon your law enforcement experience, what's the next step if we find something?
I would contact everybody, meaning OSBI, the Oklahoma Bureau of Investigation, tribal police, the local sheriff, and the local police, and the highway patrol. I'd freaking call everybody. That way, nobody can say they didn't know, and nobody can say, oh, well, we took it and it's now lost, or we didn't take it, I thought you had it. We would have everybody here on the same page. Everything's being videotaped. Everything's being photographed. All of us are going to make statements. And that way, whoever is going to take jurisdiction, which if it were me, it needs to be tribal police and then the FBI, but that's me. But everybody's got to be here and be on the same page, and everybody's got to witness the same thing so that every single person, including myself, is accountable.
Yeah, I think that's been a big problem with this case. No one's really taken full accountability. It's been splintered from day one. Right. It wasn't handled properly. So I think
found her shirt.
Tell us about that. What Toby was telling you about last night when we came in.
As the crow flies, her shirt's found over here tied to a tree with blood on it. They check her social media. That's the shirt. They quit making the shirt when she went, or 2013 when she went missing. So everything lines up. That was her shirt. When Toby found it, he gave it to a ex-law enforcement person that he believed would do the proper chain of custody and get it to the evidence person, thereby getting it to the crime lab. And let's say, is this her DNA? Is there any,
Well, didn't he show you a text? He showed you his text that he had from the OSBI, and they said they didn't want it.
They didn't want it, but the man that took it, again, if it's not OSBI, then it needs to be somebody. Again, the sheriff, the FBI, somebody should have taken custody. They should have tested it. Because if that killer grabbed her, as they, one claims she was gang raped, there could be DNA, from the killer on that shirt as well as her blood. And
because Toby also said that there was potentially dried blood on there too.
Right, and if Colt was also murdered, they said they shot him. If there was any backsplash and on that shirt from him, that would show that as well. They were both bleeding. The shirt's just gone. So again, you do not want to leave any chance for that to happen here. You want to close and circle them wagons tight as you can.
And then in your experience, you've been on probably how many of these types of excavations? Tell us what goes through your mind when, from a investigator, when you have to do these, and how do you have to prepare yourself for doing this type of work?
Well, again, I try to view it as this is something for the family to give them to say, hey, we tried this today. We know where they're not, so we're going to move here. Again, there's nothing negative. You cannot lose today. Everything today's a win. Like, I'll give you an analogy. My son is a goalie for the University of Alabama lacrosse team. Every single thing has to fail for somebody to shoot on him. So they have to lose possession of the ball. Every offensive player has to let that person get past them. Every defensive player, right, has to fail for them to shoot on him. So if he doesn't catch a goal, he was just the last chance. That's how I see our job. We're the last chance. I tell people all the time, I'm not a first responder. I'm a last responder. But that's why we're here.
Yeah, I think you couldn't have put it any better, is that this is the last responder. This is the cleanup. This is the cleanup for this entire investigation.
Everything else has failed, but we're not going to. And that's what I'm telling you. Tonight, when y'all are sitting around the fire and I'm headed back to Atlanta, you can look at Paula and say, we did everything we knew to do. We brought the people in that we knew to bring in. We walked it. We looked at it. We pumped the water out. We dug it out. We sifted it. But they're not here. But how is that bad news? So again, now are they up on this ridge? Is there a clandestine grave? Let's get the drone up. Let's get some ground penetrating radar. We don't end today. We just back up and do it differently. If somebody shoots on my son and scores, that's not it. We just back up and do it differently. Now, y'all may hear some gunfire in the background. We are okay. We are probably the safest people on the planet right now because Special Forces are training in the background on this fabulous ranch. But again, I'm here. I am more than willing to come back anytime y'all need me. Just because there are water areas here doesn't mean that's where they are. And just because somebody has claimed that, criminals are liars. So sometimes when they say, oh, I shot him in the head and I put my finger in it, maybe they're just full of it. Maybe we're looking for a grave. So, we just get those ground penetrating drones and we go back to work.
Now, there's another area that we did a separate cadaver dog search in, not too far from here, very close to here, because one of the reports that we had was that they were dismembered and put down an oil well. And this place it's tons of oil wells all there, some working, some non-working, and we checked out 3 of them that were potentially, we had tips on. The last one that they looked at, the dog hit on very vigorously. Now, the dog didn't have a lot of time to spend on it because some people came out and didn't want us there and stuff like that. We weren't physically there, but we had a team there doing it. So that needs to be checked too. What's that like? Have you ever checked like an oil well?
I've never checked an oil well, but I will say nobody is off the table. We have not excluded anyone. No place is off the table. So again, we're hearing all of these things, but I will tell you, most of the time, if you're in a situation that just gets out of control, men are typically A to B people. I got this dead body, I got to get rid of this body. When you start talking about dismembering, and then I got to take it over to this oil well, then what am I going to do with the head? Why did I dismember it? Because I don't want it to be identified, right? That's typically the case. Well, there's other ways to identify. Well, clearly her clothes were taken off. So again, that kind of tells you they don't want these people ID'd easily. To me, when you're hearing oil well, you're hearing water, you're hearing graves, you're hearing, clothing, you're hearing gunshots. We've got all these things we're looking for. So that's one thing I told Maureen. I'm not convinced there's not a gun in there necessarily, especially if it's a Saturday night special, especially if it's now used as a murder weapon, and you've got family members that are connected to the suspect that he would know to get rid of the gun. So again, everything is worth looking for. But I'll tell you what fascinates me the most is when they searched that water and got out and walked, the dog hit on the footprints as well. So that tells you how significant that hit is to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, how significant is that? Has that ever happened to you where where dogs would hit on something like that?
I've been tons of outdoor scenes where a dog's going to hit near a tree, or if you unearth some ground, the dog hits. I've never seen where somebody gets out of water and that dog hits on every single footprint. That right there is a money tree.
Wow, fantastic. Well, we're going to be here for the next 2 days doing this. We're just going to keep on doing reports here, and we'll check in with you and find out what's going. So good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Y'all are just doing, unbelievable work for this family. No question.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are here with the amazing Maureen O'Connell, who was actually in our documentary about this case, and she's very familiar with Molly and Colt's case. She's had an amazing career in law enforcement. So, Maureen, can you give me a little bit of a background on your experience in law enforcement, and when you first heard about this case, what did you think?
Sure. I spent 25 years in the FBI, 20 years of that on the Evidence Response Team, or ERT as we call it, which we train and we learn all about different elements of crime scene investigation and like blood pattern analysis, all that kind of stuff. We work on major crime scenes, little crime scenes, and it's all very interesting stuff.
So when you first heard about this case, what was your first impression?
My first impression was this is a very complex investigation, and there is a lot going on, and there were a lot of moving parts, and it seemed like you guys were getting information from all kinds of different places, and a lot of it conflicted with each other, which is why the forensics comes into play, in my opinion, very strongly, because the hallmark of any good investigator or any good investigation is to follow the facts.
Yeah, and part of the facts were that you had listened to the 911 butt dial originally, which is where we believe took place right here. So when you first heard it, what did you think? What was your first thoughts about that?
Well, it was a harrowing phone call, and the audio wasn't that good. I understand there's a scrubbed-up version, which I'm very excited to be able to listen to this afternoon. You could hear these guys. They thought they were in this isolated place, their safe space, where they come out and play and shoot guns and do all kinds of crazy stuff, when in fact they accidentally called 911 and the call was recorded. So it was a very brilliant kind of insight into what these guys were up to and who they were doing it with.
And now looking at this place here now, what are your thoughts about putting those two pieces together?
Well, I think it's actually the perfect place if you were going to hide a body. I couldn't think of a better place. Now, to get a body out here would be next to impossible unless they came of their own volition or they forced them to walk here, which is what we think happened.
So if they do find something today, what would be our next step? What would we have to do next?
Well, if we find any bones or anything, which I hope we do, we're going to let the authorities know and have it at that point become a crime scene, and they'll have the appropriate entities come in and do a proper dig.
In your experience, what is the likelihood, do you think, of us finding something here today? Do you have any intuition or any feeling on it at all?
No, I really don't. I go into these things, it can be a positive even if we don't find something, because then we'll know they're not here and we can move on to the next spot. I keep my mind wide open, and as I said, I always follow wherever the evidence will lead.
Okay. Now we're coming down to the watering hole where we believe Molly and Colt possibly are. We're going to find out.
And so this is all sandstone. And so over time, it created this hole just because of the waterfall.
Was not cut out, or this was cut out?
No.
Or it
so this
eroded?
Eroded. So
Okay.
It's a natural formation.
Okay.
The cadaver hit is actually right on the other side
That's what it was like right over there, right?
How did the dog get over there?
So we did all this construction yesterday. So before there was, so the ground level was not here, and you could walk down from some beaver and otter slides. And so we drained it, and we took after the guys dove, and then we drained it and set dogs in, and the guys would come up through these slides because it was just a natural way to walk up around the water. And the dog was hitting on the footprints coming up through those slides.
Got it.
Oh,
And so then we drained it, we sent the dogs in. They all circled it and went straight to the spot over here. There was a large tree that was fallen. They were like hitting
I remember the
underneath it.
tree.
Yep. So we cut the tree, we removed that tree, and the dogs hit again. We tried to dig with our shovels. And when we see it when it's drained, it's kind of like digging in a Slurpee.
The silt, yeah.
Yeah. And so
and that's good news, actually.
Yes.
Because the silt will protect
Correct.
and hold things together that would
Correct.
normally move quickly through.
100%. And this is spring fed, so tomorrow we'll drain it today. Tomorrow it'll be filled up again, which is also good news because it's also going to be temperature controlled. And you've got a lot of old vegetation and debris that is just stacked on top of whatever's there.
Okay.
So I think it's formed maybe kind of like a natural insulation, almost like a refrigerator.
So you said you had a number of dogs.
Yes, ma'am.
A number of them FBI trained and
Two
certified.
were trained out of the
And these dogs came at different times
Yes, ma'am.
and all hit it on the same place.
Yes, ma'am. 2 days.
Okay.
Do they come at different times a day?
Yes, ma'am. So the
Brilliant.
first dog, then the following day, we trained it again. About this time of morning when the dew's sitting on the water, we brought the dogs in. They all hit at the same spot and everything had been aired out. So, I mean, there's cadaver there. We just don't know whose it is.
Talk to me for a minute about why is this particular spot interesting and how does it tie into the case of Molly and Colt?
Yeah. And Paula can talk this probably even better than I can.
Paula, come over here. This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
You want to talk about the 911 butt dial that was pinged in this area?
Okay, 8 months after Molly and Colt went missing, there was a 911 butt dial from this area. And the caller was Colby Barrick, who is Con Nip's cousin. And on the butt dial, they were talking about shooting. He said something to the effect, shot him through the head. Look, I can stick my finger right through it. And then toward the end of the conversation, you heard 4 gunshots. And you could hear a lot of rattling going on, like a cage was being rattled, like they were moving something.
Could it have been reaching into an ammo box maybe and pulling out rounds and
No.
putting them in? No.
Like
Okay.
a chain?
I think
No.
it was in the pocket, is what I picked up on.
Okay.
It was wrestling in the pocket, but it could be. We don't know.
Okay.
You're talking about the noise?
Yeah.
Well, see, I disagree. Do you know when you go up to a gate, a cattle gate, and you open it and the chain's dinging on the cattle
the chain.
gate? That's what it sounds like.
What came to my mind too is a chain, like they're
That's what
hooking
it
it to
sounds
move
like.
something.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear the cleaned up version of that. I understand that you had some people clean that audio up because I heard the original one and it sounded, you can't make it out, but what little I did hear, it sounded to me like rattling ammo.
But didn't that 911 operator tell law enforcement? I mean,
Listen to the entire thing. It's about 11 minutes long. Joe Russell calls her, and he said something about the call coming in from Moxley Lake. She never mentioned Moxley Lake to him. All she said over the radio was it was.
She thinks she heard
that-
a confession or something about.
Well,
Molly.
yes, and she heard over the radio. Well, the call came in north of Long Hollow Road, is what she said. She never said anything about Moxley Lake. So when Joe Russell called in, and this is all on the original audio, he says about the call from Moxley Lake, and she said yes, and he asked some questions I don't recall, and then they hang up. He calls back, he tells her, he said, I want a copy of that. And she was like, well, we'll have to wait until Monday when Becky comes in, because this was on a Saturday. We'll have to wait until Becky. He says, no, I want it today. A copy of the recording. And then she called back to Colby Barrick's phone, and she said to him, she was like, we just received a call from this number, and who is this? He said Colby Barrick. You know, so it was him. We also know it was them because him and Keith Gordon, one of the people with him here, and Big Jim Taylor, those three got ticketed that day for trespassing on this property. They were all in possession of a firearm, all three of them felons. And there was 3 cops that came out here, Joe Russell, Jim Diggs, and Freddie Lawson.
And nothing happened.
No, they just were ticketed for trespassing.
And also in that call, you hear them say, oh yeah, they're in 4 feet of water right over there. Right? Well, this is 4 feet of water.
Right.
Now, were they talking about this? I mean, it sure sounded like they did.
This is where the pink.
Well, I thought what was interesting is that the 911 dispatcher was saying that when she was describing what was on the call to Joe, she specifically said they were talking about Molly.
Yes,
and
she
Colt.
specifically said
So
Molly. And she got firsthand knowledge of what it was. It wasn't like a recording. She's listening back. And I tell you what, I probably listened to that recording 200 times.
Okay, water here. This is where it pinged. All that stuff makes great sense. But I noticed coming into the ranch that there are other bodies of water. How? So you have one
Why
up.
is it significant?
Yes, you have the north one and the south one. Is that right?
Yep.
So the north one's up here. This is this little drain off area.
Yep.
And then you've got the south one down there. So is this the only one that would be 4 feet of water? Of course, I imagine the other ones would have 4 feet on the exterior.
Yeah, so the South Lake, which is known as Moxley Lake, actually the entire depth is 4 to 6 feet. So you could say that they're there. Now that lake has been doven. We've had 3 different sonar groups come through. If it was a body in mud, you're probably not going to see it on sonar.
Right.
But they did have divers out there that didn't find anything. There's a lot of carp in that lake, which means
Bottom
you're not gonna have
feeders.
a lot of, yes, so you're not going to have a lot of vegetation.
Right.
So if there was something, it wouldn't be covered up by vegetation. Whereas the North Lake has lots of vegetation. However, the North Lake during 2013, when Molly and Colt went missing, there was a drought and then there was a flood later on, but the dam up there had been breached, and whenever the drought happened, it was basically just a mud hole.
Oh, there was very little water.
But as a crime scene, I can tell you why this is the best place.
Tell us, please.
Without this cutout, there ain't no getting to it.
No.
I mean, look up there.
So
You
no one
couldn't
even knew this
You couldn't
existed.
traverse that bamboo.
You know, the first time I was here was in 2013, and I've been out here multiple times. We came in the back way. We breached the fence line over here. We came in this property because this was definitely the place to be because they were always on it.
You even spent your life coming in the back way and all this other stuff because this is where all the kids would come to hang out and get crazy.
But that
hold on a
beautiful
second.
lake this morning, we could just walk right in it.
Right.
If we wanted to put waders on and go check it out. If it weren't for this, how do you get in there?
Right.
If you got in, you couldn't get out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm just telling
Well, this
you.
was all.
You're
You
in
see how
there.
this level is? This was all level here before they cut into
That's
it.
what I'm. That's
So
what I
that's
wanted
what
to.
I'm saying.
Can't see
When
from
did
the
you
air.
buy this?
December 2016.
Okay, it was 2017 when I even learned about it. I'd been here a dozen times.
And that's because
And I
whenever-
have been all on this side of that lake.
Okay.
And I never knew this was here.
Yeah, so we had one of the investigators who called me that you introduced me to came out and he wanted to check some wells on the property. So
Some
I went
what?
with some wells, some
Wells.
water
Okay.
wells, not pumping wells.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, did y'all ever check the big water hole? And he's like, what are you talking about? Water hole in between the lakes. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Take me there. And so I brought them down here and they got on the ledge of this and they just looked at each other.
Why do you think this is a perfect spot?
Again, if this weren't here, if this cutout weren't here, it's almost like a quarry.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you were up there and you just fell in. How are you getting out?
There's no way.
There's no way to get out of there. So there's no better place. If you and I were going to dump a body, I'd be like, David, come on. This is perfect. Because even if you could even see a little something, there's no getting to it.
Right.
You would have to spend 4 days to get to the body.
Right.
And you know, at nighttime,
It's pitch black.
it is so
All you can
dark
see
out here.
are the stars.
Like
And-
you were so smart last night, even with me, saying, turn your headlights on for her. You know,
Yeah.
flash your lights. I was damn near at a, y'all need to fire a gun.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I could not see y'all till I was right up on you, basically.
Right.
And that's with a GPS, with y'all looking for me. If I were just out here and you said,
Oh.
find your way back.
With no
to the ranch,"
roads?
Shit.
As the crow flies, from where we were last night?
It's actually about 700 yards. We actually measured it out.
Oh.
It's geolocating just to check. So one theory is that if someone was dismembered back there in the woods and during that point of time, you would not have, no one would have known you're back there. I mean, it's in the sticks. At that point, you're 4 miles from the main road, which is Oswald, and very few people came out here except for folks that shouldn't be out here, trespassers.
Okay.
And so if you were to dismember something, you could very easily track them over here and put them in the hole.
All right.
So we look for clothing specifically, it will be right there. They're not going to take that away.
No. So if someone died of exposure, you're 100% right. I mean, you would have more materials there.
Yeah.
Now, if there was malicious intent, then if I was going to put myself in someone that was doing that situation, I would dispose of all of those materials, probably burn them.
Right.
Well, that's the burn pit.
Get that
That's what the burn pit's all about.
And that's what the dogs hit on as well with Chase.
My understanding.
Yeah. It was Trace Sargent. I can tell
So
you.
you know this. Okay.
She's the real deal.
Yeah.
If her dog hit on that thing, I can guarantee you something was in there.
Yeah. And the previous owners were rarely out here. I spoke with the previous owner, and she actually, she told me, she's 82 now, she lives in Montana, but her and her husband actually were threatened when they'd come on their own property, and she did not feel safe coming on her own property. And that was with some of the suspects.
Can you believe that?
No.
Right.
Well, I'm sure they don't feel safe coming on your property, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think we have that problem.
It was going to take about 45 minutes to pump the pond. And while we waited, the weight of what we were doing started to sink in. Paula has wanted to search this pond for the past 5 years, and now here we are.
Not only is it possible that we could find remains of Molly and Colt or someone else, but this land is sacred. It is native land and has a long history of mysticism about it.
And that's when Heath, Paula's son, and Toby asked if we could pray, because moving all of this land and dirt was going to disturb something or someone, and we wanted to be respectful to those souls.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. Lord, we pray for soft hands, a smooth operator today. Lord, we pray for everything to go right. Lord, we pray that we find these 2 kids, Lord, our family members and our friends. And Lord, we just pray that you watch over us, guide us, send us in the right direction, send us to the right spot, and just lead us in everything that we do today. Guide our hands, guide our hearts, and just let us be the best people that we possibly can be today in your name. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
After the prayer, the team began pumping out the water.
So let's start with the pump, drain the water out, and then after you pump it out, the next stage is what? So
We're going to bring the excavator and we're going to dig out the holes. And then these ladies are going to tell us what to do with that.
Okay.
Oh, we're good at that.
Okay, cool.
Once the team finished pumping the water from the pond, Brian Trotter, our backhoe operator, was able to go in and start digging. He filled his bucket and then headed back up to the team.
All right, so we were able to empty that whole watering hole out
Yes,
in a matter of what, an hour, 45 minutes?
at the most.
So that's good stuff. However, it's not wide enough for the big rig. He's got to go in to dig it all up. So here we are.
But here's the amazing thing. If there's a cowboy boot in there, we're going to find it.
Right.
Well, that's not something that's easily going to be hidden, and that's not going anywhere.
Right.
It's not going to disintegrate.
Yeah.
Neither is a gun.
Right. We just have to be patient
Yep.
and go through it meticulously and slowly.
Yeah.
And
Like I got a buddy, she says you're not looking for a needle in a haystack, you're looking for a needle and a pile of needles. So you got to look at everything.
right.
Like every dark object, just like you. I mean, how many bones did you think you saw for a second?
I know.
It happens.
4.
Yeah. But if we see a zipper or a button or money or a cowboy boot or a belt buckle, game on.
All the things that are built to last.
That's right.
Plastic.
Yes.
Plastic never goes
Yes.
away. A
Yeah.
comb.
What if he had a flask? What if he had a lighter? I mean, all those things he could have had on him when he went running.
Yep.
Yeah, but see that silt? That's a beautiful thing. That's going to protect whatever's in there so nicely.
You've got silt like that, and it just compacts onto the body and
Yeah.
everything surrounding it, and it holds it in place.
Yeah.
And that is very fine silt. Oh, he could feel the debris under his boot, he said. Consider for a second, how many inches of leaves fall per season? And we're talking 2013
Right.
to 2022.
Right. But you've got trees. That tree, when it hits, what is that, 1,000 pounds?
Mm-hmm.
That could have pushed it 4 feet.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Well, you can see that's 1, 2, 3 different trees have fallen. You got to figure that's at least 1,000 pounds of pressure that's going to push, let's say, a skull further down into the sediment.
And if you look at the exterior, the rim
Yeah.
of this whole enclosure, it's all these trees ready to fall in.
Absolutely. And the wind and water,
Storms.
that
Lightning.
erosion, you're going to have more. That tree right there is ready to go any minute.
Yeah, so are like 3 over
Yeah.
here. This one's halfway down.
Right. So not only does it make this harder to excavate, it makes it almost impossible to know how deep something might be. If we didn't have that and you just threw something out there, it might be a foot or 2 after 10 years.
Hey guys, we're talking about the probable amount of leaves that fall every season. Probably a foot or 2. And we're also talking about the trees and the heavy trees that just fall off the sides or come down by lightning, and the pressure that those would have on anything of evidentiary value. And then, so we're talking from 2013 to 2022 about this much stuff. So it does make sense for us to just keep digging. I think what I'm gonna do now is turn the hoses on, and I'm gonna start looking at that stuff. You guys can stay here. Yeah, look at all those twigs and branches there.
Be right in front of your face.
I mean, so even right here, like my foot is on.
Absolutely. We were talking about that. Even with you walking, you're pushing it 2 more feet probably. Possibly, if something's there. But when I work, I always work like there is something there.
Yeah, me too. So does this feel like branches? There's that place talking to us again.
Yeah.
I cannot believe that's where the dogs hit.
For a good reference, this tree that's fallen,
Yes.
it came right through here, and the dogs are hitting on either side of that tree.
Yeah.
So that's the reason we removed the tree so we could dig. So, I mean, where he's standing, where I'm at, I mean, this is our target zone, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think that's where the next 3 scoops need to come from.
Right.
There.
When we set the dogs in all this, I mean, they hit right here, all 3 of them. I mean, I would just keep digging.
I would too.
All right, let's do it. Let's start. We'll go back up here. We need somebody to man the hose while we look at the evidence. Eyes on the pile, going down. Watch her as she drops, layer by layer.
All eyes were on the bucket of dirt as Brian dumped it, hoping he would spot something.
There's a yellow thing in there. I saw that yellow thing. Yeah.
It's a leak.
Put it over there by the screen just because it's interesting. No, it's not a honeycomb. It's a, I have them by my house. Someone's going to be happy one day when they come out here and they're like, God damn, there's a whole nice dry pile of wood.
Yeah. No shortage of that. Right here?
No, right here. Right here. Wait. Show me some love right here.
Maureen and the team had set down a tarp, and they created a trap to catch any of the smaller particles.
Oh, that's a piece of bamboo. It's good to get close to the... So what we're looking for here is some larger stuff. Like, could we find a zipper, a skull, a shoe, a boot, a shirt, pair of jeans, anything plastic, anything that would have, withstood the test of time. All kinds of bones. We're not looking as small as we are looking for teeth, but we're trying to do a bigger or broader look. And you notice how this area, they say that this water is like a bog. There's not a lot of oxygen here, which is good for us. There's a ton of leaf foliage all the time. There are a ton of leaves that fall every year, like over a foot. And so we're talking about how many years now, from 2013 till
almost
22.
10 years,
yeah.
a decade.
Right. And there's all these trees that are falling down. These tree branches are insane. Not to mention all the bamboo. There's just tons of bamboo. So we're trying to, with all that stuff and all the information that we have, we're hoping that if the bodies are here, they're under a blanket of this stuff so that we can unearth it. So
how deep do you think it could settle in 10 years? Because that was
deep.
The water runs constant.
Yes, it's a spring-fed little area, and I would say it's almost like a ginormous diving well. And it's got some spring-fed things come from the south, and then it goes over this little berm into the lake from the north onto the south. And so it's like a giant deep pool right over here. And it's always spring fed, so it's not really affected by the drought, they say. They say that this place is never, this area is never dry. Yeah. It's from the drought. So I'm hoping that with the way it's enclosed, it's got a complete canopy of trees, that we should, if the kids are here, we should be able to find them. So they're washing this stuff down. A lot of it is silt. We have a remarkably good platform here that we built with...
Letting gravity do the work.
We're letting gravity do the work, which is exactly how we designed it. And we put up some tarps so that it'll roll off nicely. We also have a catch at the bottom in case we come across something that we find of interest. We can stop.
Small.
We can stop and go down and do a deeper dive or call law enforcement. As you can see, you see a shiny thing every once in a while, and we're all on top of it. These ladies are unbelievable. Bonnie, it's her birthday back here, and she's been working like a dog all day long. So we're just taking off the very top layer as gently as you can. It gets onto this flat, silty surface. Search that. So put it right there on the tarp, and then from there we're going to have to dig it onto the screen. All right.
Do and I'll do it.
Okay, you and I are gonna switch between these two. Okay. He's gonna throw this thing down. Look out. We're just gonna take little bits at a time and pull off the very top, layer by layer. We got a lot of good solid sand. We're gonna pull it to the end here. And Mac is gonna be looking, and I'm gonna be looking, and you're gonna be looking. And Mac.
Next time it has to be small either.
No.
Pretty obvious.
Well, it could be small. All right, we can start washing it down, I guess, then, huh? I think we're going to start from there and spray over the top of it.
You want to light like a shower, or do you want to...
Start with the shower. Always start small. We can go bigger later. Is that real heavy on you or no?
Oh, no, that's good.
Really? Okay. Let's get a little bit more in there for you. What do you think? Can you see it? You know I'm looking at this stick, Mac.
Oh, yeah, I was too.
Anybody want to grab a rake or anything? We're going to be here for a while.
I took off and it's left with the hose at the...
Okay, we'll do it this way then. We'll do it this way. Go ahead. Want to stand here?
No, I'm good. I like that light.
Yeah, this light is perfect.
Yeah, it is unbelievable.
You want to look here and I'll look here?
Sure.
Okay. Taking off this first load here.
Yeah.
And we're not seeing anything large, which is essentially what we're hoping for.
Sure.
And
that's not surprising. I think we got to go deeper anyway.
Yeah.
So I think the first two may not yield anything, but I think 3 and 4 and 5 is coming up.
Right. It's a clean, right? And plus they were all high.
Right.
I mean, at what point when people are super high, are they going to have the stick-to-itiveness and the focus to start digging and keep digging until the job is properly done?
Right.
But that would also have taken trips.
Yes.
They would have to go get rope and some type of
Good
anchor
point.
and all that. They're not doing that.
No.
They're
Concrete,
high, they're scared,
mixing
they're
it.
lazy. Right.
And then those buckets would have been around here. Someone would have found concrete buckets.
Right.
So it's just, your first thought is path of least resistance. Keep everything in mind. Always stay open to whatever crops up, but understand that it's the path of least resistance initially when it comes to dumping bodies and this sort of thing.
So would the body stay in the same place, or would...
No, they could move around.
Pieces of the body possibly go here and there.
But
So we
they're
could
not going
find...
to be too far.
Right, I got you.
Because again,
But like if part of the body was here and there was a drought and it was exposed partially, then the animals could have taken it.
That's right.
But there still
correct.
should be, so if
right.
we could find the highest point of your property, do you have any way to find that out? Because that's where the animals, the coyotes in particular, but it was a long time ago, but that's where they would have taken the body part, and one of it may have had a sleeve on it or something.
But that's another reason.
Yeah, now this is worth doing. This is worth doing. Scraping around the ends with or going through there, walking through there and looking for, would you get me that soft rake? The lightweight one, because that's a good one for me to start over there.
Because I
you don't
still
have
think
to.
they would be near the edge.
Yeah. Well, but they can. That thing is calling to me.
Yeah, it is me too.
Where's Cindy?
Yes.
And I know it's just the stuff falling in, but this little spot right here is calling to both of us.
Yeah. I keep looking at it. I
Me
can't
too.
Stop looking at
Me
it.
either. Can we get 2 more scoops from that money spot, right where the log was?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
All right, we can turn that on again.
That looked like a bone.
Yes, it does. Hey, rinse it off, did you? Sure. Yeah, rinse that off and I'll put it up here. Oh, I wanted to show you this too. Hey, hold this for me, will you? Oh, what'd you find? Oh, hell yeah. Dude, this is like leather. Coming apart.
Oh yeah, that looks like a turtle shell.
Okay.
Turtle shell.
Close.
But hey,
Finding stuff.
I'm right.
I'll put it in here. I mean, if there's no oxygen and they're encased in, 100, 200 pounds of leaves and stuff, it could be beautifully preserved. I'd have to have, we'd have to have some tests done on the water and the
and the vegetation, but from what we've been told by the homeowner and others, this is very low oxygen. So I would imagine it would be decomposed, but there is also the chance it might not be.
Well, it's a lot of work.
The day was long, and everyone was exhausted. We had been digging for hours and hours and did not find anything substantial.
That's when we asked Paula if maybe it was time to bring dogs back in. If they hit on something, then we would continue digging. And if they didn't, then maybe we would have to stop.
Paula was able to reach out to someone locally who brought out his dogs, but they were not the same dogs that hit on the pond last year. Those dogs were FBI certified.
Even though the dogs looked as if they were indicating that there was something in the pond, they lapped up the water, which I know is usually a sign that there is something there. And they did run towards the bamboo. They also circled the part of the pond that Maureen and Mac had zeroed in on, and I felt that the dogs were trying to tell us something.
But their handler said that there was not a strong indicator, and he could not confirm if there was a hit or not. It was a huge letdown, and the team felt defeated. We have had a lot of experience with dogs, and they're usually right, so how could 4 other dogs hit so strongly, and then after the dig, these 2 dogs didn't indicate anything?
Dusk quickly spread over the site, and it was time to pack up, but something felt off. I didn't feel as if we were done yet, and I still felt that we should continue to dig.
And I felt the same way, and so did Heath, Paula's son. He even voiced it to everyone when we were sitting around the fire that night. He said, "There's more to do. We cannot stop." And that's when we decided we couldn't give up.
The next day we called another dog handler. He brought 2 Belgian Malinois dogs with him.
Belgian Malinois are the special forces of dogs. They're super smart, and we trust them. They are focused, and in our experience, they have always been accurate. In addition to that, the handler works with the OSBI and has a track record of finding remains with his dogs.
Within minutes of the dogs being let loose, the Malinois indicated that there were human remains in the pond, right next to the spot that Maureen and Mac had zeroed in on earlier.
In fact, their handler said without a shadow of a doubt that there were human remains in that hole, and he was going to send his report to the OSBI, and that's when we knew we had to keep digging. In fact, their handler said without a shadow of a doubt that there are human remains in that hole, and he was going to send his report to the OSBI, and that's when we knew we had to keep digging.
Little did we know what was going to happen on day 2, but it's another reason why you must always trust your instinct.
Next week, our adventure continues. Stay tuned.
We also wanted to let everyone know that we apologize for the delay in providing additional content for our paid tiers. We have ironed out all of the technical issues, and we are now going to be uploading new content. We filmed the entire week in Love County and are currently editing. We will have it ready before Christmas, and the documentary will be available on our website under the Real Investigator tier.
Next time on Partners in True Crime. Next week, we will be sharing the second day of our dig and the exciting progress that we have made in this case. Stay tuned. If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
For any tips relating to the disappearance of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, please contact 833-4-MOLLY and Colt, and they will be directed to the proper law enforcement agency.
All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.